We'll talk about our fast-growing trees. The main ones that we use there are black locust, hybrid willows, and hybrid poplars. What we want out of them is we just want them to grow fast. We want them to provide shade. With black locust, we're looking for timber, potentially looking for like a pollinator tree that's going to provide a lot of feed for bees as well. But those are typically trees that we're going to consider to be a shorter term tree on our farms. We're not going to keep them around quite as long. And then your ruminant stockpiled feed, those trees are going to be a little bit slower growing, but we want them around long term because they're going to continue to produce high quality feed for us for 100 years. So the honey locust and the persimmon. So the main challenge with a ruminant uh, feed, a ruminant feed tree, is that in a rotational grazing context, the livestock need to be there in order to make use of that feed, right? So it's one thing if it's a continuous grazing and the livestock always have access to the tree, and then if you have, let's say, apples dropping, then the livestock can just camp right underneath those trees and eat the apples. And that's nice and easy. But if you have cattle on, let's say, a 30 or 40-day rotation, and the apple drops on day one and they're not back until day 40, those apples are going to be gone. So for ruminant systems in a rotational grazing context, we want trees that are going to drop things that are going to last a long time. So for persimmons, that's a little bit more challenging, especially our earlier dropping ones. Like persimmons will drop as early as August, especially in the South. You're probably going to get earlier drop than we do here. Um, and they're going to drop all the way through January, February, depends on the cultivar. There's some really late dropping cultivars out there. So for a ruminant system, I would really err towards the later dropping persimmons. Um, but like I said earlier, honey locusts are really, really well suited for this because they drop late. Their pods don't break apart very easily. Um, so with honey locust, the genetics matter a lot. And particularly what we don't want is we don't want thorny trees. With honey locust, persimmons, and mulberries, each of those has male and female on different trees. So we only really want trees that are going to be that are females, right? So we only want trees that are going to yield and provide additional feed on our farms if we can help it. There's some value in putting seedlings out there, but if we can have double the productivity, we might as well. So that's why we're working on clonal propagation of each one of those. And for honey locust, one of the criteria for us is that the trees that we're putting out there have to be thornless. So one of the things that we are now at finally with our nursery is we have access to trees that we planted back in 2020 and 2021 that are now developing pods. So those were seedling honey locust trees that now are 15 feet tall. And we have about 100 out there across a couple different farms that have pods on them. So we can go to those trees and say, this tree is 15 feet tall. It's got no thorns on it. It's got pods of certain qualities. We know it's going to be a female. We know it's going to yield pods that are roughly this quality, and we'll keep watching them for the next couple of years to really be able to evaluate these trees. Um, but over time, what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to take propagation material off of those trees and be able to guarantee, look, this came from a tree that was thornless, that had pods that were 35% sugar, and then over time we'll be able to see does it yield annually? Does it yield biennially where it goes up and down? Does it yield um, does it drop its pods early or late? All those things are what we're going to be able to tell from these trees that are finally now bearing on some of our earliest sites. So that's something I'm very excited about, and will really allow us to up the game when it comes to having relatively inexpensive clonally propagated honey locust as well as the mulberries and persimmons that we've been working on. So for for pigs and poultry, like pigs in particular, they have so many different things that they can eat. There's tons of options. Mulberry is really critical because it's the thing that drops the earliest. So in the fall, you're just spoiled for options. You got persimmons, apples, pears, plums, chestnuts, oaks, hazelnuts, hickories, all kinds of stuff that's dropping over that time period for hogs. But during the early summer, it's really a much smaller selection. For us, we figure on mulberry starting to drop right around June 1st. And then for some cultivars, they're dropping for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then they stop. Other ones, like I have one outside of my house that's called Illinois Everbearing, and that's dropped for at least 2 months now. And it still has some small green fruits on it. So I'm anticipating that it'll drop for another week or two. Um, so that's kind of what we're looking at for pigs and poultry. And then for income, if you want to have trees that are going to provide an additional income stream, chestnuts is kind of the main one, as something that is it's a reliable producer of something that is well known. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire, particularly for farms that have people out and they do events. I think it's a great option. Or if you already have a market outlet for your meat, then I think you can add these tree crops to it. I think it would be great to have farms out there that have these kind of seasonal draws to bring in people and do a chestnut roast or do a hazelnut festival or pawpaw festival or whatever. Things that are kind of seasonal, they're unique, they draw people in, no one else has this. And then while they're in, let me sell you some beef, let me sell you some pork or some chicken as well that I'm also raising on the farm. So they're really neat ways to interact with people. Um, and then, so hazelnuts is an interesting one. I think most people are familiar with those. Yellow bud hickory is one that can be, folks are starting to use as like a native uh, olive oil substitute. So you can, the yellow bud hickory, also known as bitternut hickory, you can press them. The bitterness in the nuts does not go into the oil. It stays in the shell or it stays in all the shell and the nut meat. And what you're left with is a high quality oil that can replace olive oil. And it's kind of a unique crop. And it seems that it really does have opportunity to scale if the economics are right. So I don't necessarily recommend it for people to go whole hog on that, but for people who are interested in playing around, it's an interesting tree crop. And if if the markets don't end up being good, the cattle and hogs will eat it. And then other trees for native biodiversity as well.